Alright, so here in example 2, we're going to find the slope. Instead of using a graph, we're going to use 2 points. And we're going to use this slope formula here. It's called y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? Or you can call it change in y over change in x, but you'll really need to know this one. Okay? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's something that you will want to memorize. Okay, so it says, note, x1 and y1 must come from the same point. x2 and y2 must come from the same point. So the very first thing that you should do in any one of these slope formula problems where you're only given 2 points and it says to find the slope of the line is figure out which point are you going to use for x2 and y2 and which point are you going to use for x1 and y1. I would normally recommend that you use that you want your y2 to normally be the bigger y value. Okay? It doesn't really matter, but that's the way I always like to do it. So the very first thing I want to do is label which ones are x1, y1, and which ones are x2, y2. So x1 and y1 must come from the same point, and so must x2 and y2. So I'm going to look, and I want my y2 to be this guy right here, the 7, because 7 is bigger than 1. So if this is y2, then this has to be x2, which makes these x1 and y1. Again, doesn't really matter. You can do it however you want to, as long as your 1s are from the same ordered pair and your 2s are from the same ordered pair. Then you're just going to plug these in to the formula that you were given. Okay, so we're going to plug them into this formula. So my y2 was 7 minus my y1 was 1, and that goes over x2, 5, minus x1 is negative 2. Okay? Now the top we don't really need to change to adding, but we can. So we're going to change top to adding, 7 plus negative 1. And we'll change the bottom to adding, so it's 5 plus the opposite of negative 2, which is 2. Then we're going to do the top. 7 plus negative 1 is 6, over 5 plus 2 is 7. And the last thing we need to do is see if we can simplify this, because our slope always has to be simplified, and in this case we can't simplify 6/7. And we always write slope with m equals, because m is our slope variable. So m equals 6/7. Okay, so again, important things to remember. The very first thing you should do is tell which points are your sub 1s, which ones are your sub 2s, and label those. I want you to label them every time, just like I did right here. Then plug them into the formula, change to adding, and then solve it. And again, slope always m equals. Okay, let's go on to another example. Okay, so here we go with a couple more examples. So we got our 2 points here. It says find the slope of the line that goes through those 2 points. Remember, I told you I like to have my first numbers be bigger if possible, and I usually start with the y's being bigger. So I'm going to look for my bigger y and make that the sub 2's. So here, this time, my sub 2's are my first pair, x sub 2 and y sub 2, so I'm going to make sure I write those down. Then here we have x sub 1 and y sub 1. Now, I'm going to rewrite the formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then I'm just going to plug them in. Well, my y2 was 6 minus my my y1 was 2 over, and then we'll put my x's on bottom. x2 was 5 minus x1 was 3. And if I were to look at these, my x2 and my y2 that went together should be here. So my ordered pair was x5, y6. That matches up. And my ordered pair was x3, y2 for the second one. That matches up. Okay. Now this one, don't bother to change the adding, because this is just straightforward subtraction. Okay. 6 minus 2 is 4. And 5 minus 3 is 2. Alright, now I'm not done yet, because I got to simplify that, and I got to put m equals, so it's m equals 2. m equals positive 2 for that one. Okay, that's what it would reduce to. You could put 2 over 1 if you want to, but you don't need to. Alright, but what you do need to know, that if a line looks like this, if I say your slope is m equals 2, that really we got to figure out what the rise over run is. So to do that, we would have to write it as 2 over 1. Okay, so we know that our rise on any number that looks like this, or sorry, our run on any number that looks like this, the bottom number would be a 1. Okay, alright, and let's go on to this example here. Again, same thing. Pick which ones are going to be your sub 2s and your sub 1s. I'm going to make these over here my sub 2s because my y is bigger. So I got x sub 2, y sub 2. Again, it really doesn't matter at all. And make those my sub 1s. Okay, so formula. And then plug it in. So my y2 is 4, minus my y1 is negative 5, over my x2 is negative 4, minus my x1 is 2. Now this is one where it's going to benefit you probably to change it to addition. Alright, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and change this one to addition just because of the minus negatives and things like that. So this is 4 plus the opposite of negative 5 is 5 over negative 4 plus the opposite of 2 is negative 2. Now 4 plus 5 is 9 over negative 4 plus negative 2 is negative 6. And that will simplify to m equals 3 goes into both of those, so it's negative 3 halves. Okay? Again, when one's positive, one's negative, that just makes the whole fraction itself negative. Okay? So this tells me that this can be a downhill line. Alright? Now let's look at some bonus examples here real quick. Okay, make sure you have these numbers over here down, because I'm about to erase them. Okay, so they can get out of my way, which will also make them out of your way. Alright, so let's look at one like this. If I give you two ordered pairs that are 4, 1 and 4, 5. Okay, well again, pick which ones are your sub 2s and your sub 1s, doesn't really matter. Here's x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2. Okay, we'll plug in the formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Let's plug in our numbers. Well, my y2 is 5, minus my y1 is 1. Then on the bottom, my x's are both 4, so I'm going to get 4 minus 4. And when I solve that, I'm going to get 4 over 0. Well, we just talked about slopes like this. We can't divide by 0. So what kind of slope is this then? If we have 0 on bottom, means my run is 0. That's a vertical line. That's an m equals undefined. Okay, whenever you see the 0 on the bottom, when your run is 0, that means it's going to be a straight up and down line, because it's not going to run. It's not going to go from left to right. So that's an undefined. Okay? And let's look at one more example while we're here. Let's say we just flop those numbers around and made it 1, 4 and 5, 4. Okay, so again, we'll make this our sub 1s and our sub 2s. Fill in the formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now plug in our y's. Well, they're both 4. So I get 4 minus 4 on top. On the bottom, my x2 is 5 minus my x1 is 1. 4 minus 4 is 0. Over the bottom, we get 4. Anytime 0 is on top, that means my rise is 0. So that's going to be a flat line like this with no rise. Okay? Remember what kind of slope those have? Well, 0 divided by 4 is just 0. So m equals 0. Or I could say that's no slope. Okay, either way. When there's 0 on top, the slope is either 0 or no slope. Those mean the same thing. Alright, and let's go on to one more example. Alright, now these are probably the toughest examples that you'll have on this assignment for slope. So make sure that you really understand these if you don't ask questions. Okay, this says to find the value of y so that the line passing through the 2 points has the given slope. So we're trying to figure out what point this needs to be to make our line have a slope of 3. Well, we know the x value of this we just have to find the y value. Okay, so again, we'll start by writing down our formula. This time we'll use m in here, so m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? Now for these type of problems, I'm going to recommend that the y you don't know is always your y2. Okay, because that'll make solving the equation a little easier. So we'll make this x1, y1 over here. So these are going to be x2, y2, because I want this unknown y value to be y2. Well, and I know the slope is 3. So I'm going to plug all that into this formula and then solve for my variable. So m, the slope is 3. That's got to equal my y2, which was y, minus y1, which is negative 2, over x2, which is 2, minus 0. Okay, now we'll adjust this a little bit. We'll change our subtraction to addition on the top, so I get 3 equals y plus, the opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. And on bottom 2 minus 0, well, that's just 2. Now I need to solve this equation for my y. So the very first thing I have to do is get rid of this bottom. Okay, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. Because again, multiplying by 2 will get rid of the division by 2. Okay, or the dividing by 2. And when I do that, that's going to cancel the bottoms here. I'm going to slide this over. 3 times 2 is 6 on the left side. And I canceled out my bottoms, so now over on the right I've just got y plus 2. Now I need to subtract 2 to get y by itself, and that's going to give me my answer. Okay, 4 equals y, or y equals 4. So that tells me that my other y value has to be 4. Well, if I look and I plug that in to my equation I had originally, okay, 4 minus negative 2, we said before that's the same as 4 plus 2, which is 6, over 2 minus 0, which is 2. And 6 divided by 2 gives me my slope of 3. So it checks out. Okay, and it's always a good idea to check your work like that to make sure you got the right answer. Alright, now let's go on to our very last example in this video. So again, same thing, we're going to put m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 first. I'm going to pick my y points. Again, I want my y I don't know to be y2, so this is going to be x2 and y2 this time. And these are x1 and y1. So let's plug those in. My y2 is y, minus my y1 is 4, over my x2 is 3, and my x1 is 1. And again, that's got to equal my slope, which is negative 1/2. Alright, well, let's go ahead and negative 1/2 is equal to y plus negative 4 on top, over 3 minus 1 is 2. Well, to get the top all by itself, which is what I need to do, I need to get rid of the bottom. So I'm going to get rid of the bottom by multiplying by 2 on both sides. And that cancels out the bottom here. Cancel out dividing by 2. Well, the same thing kind of happens over here. Okay, I had it divided by 2, and multiply by 2 cancels out. Leaves me with just negative 1. Or you can think of that as negative 1/2 times 2 is negative 1. And that equals my new right side doesn't have a bottom to it, so it's y plus negative 4. Now I'm going to get y by itself by adding 4 to each side. And negative 1 plus 4 is 3. So I get 3 equals y, or y equals 3 in this case. Okay? Y equals 3. Alright, again, those examples can be pretty tough. So make sure you ask if there's any questions. There's a lot to this lesson, so again, you make sure you got a good grasp on how to find slope. Alright? Okay, good luck on your homework.